welcome everyone to session number 306 of Kevin Reed's A Course in Miracles. Okay. Today we're going back to the supplements to A Course in Miracles. This supplement is called Psychotherapy, Purpose, Process, and Practice. All right, we are in the last section number 7, Roman numeral 7 of chapter 2. Chapter 2 is the process of psychotherapy. Section 7 is entitled The Ideal Patient-Therapist Relationship. Okay then. Let us begin. Who then is the therapist? And who is the patient? In the end, everyone is both. He who needs healing must heal. Physician, heal thyself. Who else is there to heal? And who else is in need of healing? Each patient who comes to the therapist offers him a chance to heal himself. He is therefore his therapist. And every therapist must learn to heal from each patient who comes to him. He thus becomes his patient. God does not know of separation. What he knows is only that he has one son. His knowledge is reflected in the ideal patient-therapist relationship. God comes to him who calls, and in him he recognizes himself. All right. So who's the therapist? Who's the patient? He says, in the end, everyone is both. All right. Bottom line is, everyone is helping each other to heal. All right. He who needs healing must heal. All right. And we all need healing because we believe we're separated from the oneness. That's the major healing. That separation, that belief, takes many forms, and some of the forms are psychological, mental stress. Well, it's all mental. It's psychological stress. This is supposedly focusing on the therapist who is in the field of psychotherapy. But he's expanding it here now to everyone, right? He says, physician, heal thyself. Who else is there to heal? It's just another little way of saying this. There's nobody out there. But we're not at that point. Always keep those things in the back of your mind. There's only one Son of God. One offspring of the Creator. I hate to just, it's the old-timey use of pronouns. But there's only one. There's only the oneness, the one offspring, all right, of God that, just became host to the tiny mad idea for a second. That idea that maybe I could be separate. I want to be an individual. Maybe I could do that. And in that moment, the mind split. All right, the one mind. And we chose to believe I could do it. All right. This is what he means by you need healing. We need to reintegrate the mind. All right. Who else is there to heal? And who else is in need of healing? Each patient who comes to the therapist offers him a chance to heal himself. Because, they offer us the chance, everyone offers us the chance to heal ourselves, to realize there is no separation, because they reflect to us what guide we're listening to, what thought system am I adhering to, what thought system am I aligning myself with. So each person can reflect that to me, okay? So each patient who comes to the therapist offers him a chance to heal himself. He is therefore the therapist. Okay. And every therapist must learn to heal from each patient who comes to him. He thus becomes the patient. All right. So how the therapist learns to heal from each patient is by becoming aware of any projections onto the patient, becoming aware of, we're trying to remove the blocks to the awareness that there is no separation. There are no separate interests. We all have the same interest, bottom line. And that same interest is to be liberated from this ego thought system, be liberated from the lie that I'm separated from the oneness. Okay? And I do that in relationships. That's the Course's big thing is relationship. Right? Because you reflect to me what course of action, what course of thought I'm taking. Right? Do I believe in separation and chaos, and I got to be careful of you, and I got to get mine? I'm here all alone, and I did something wrong, and I'm trying to hide it, so I'm going to hide it in you. You did it. All those things, the projection of guilt. And you offer me the opportunity to see that I'm doing that, to see that I'm projecting onto you. Oh, this person's a nutcase. I don't know if I can help, whatever. They're not listening. Whatever it is. Just notice what I'm projecting onto the other. Okay? That offers me the opportunity to come into my right mind and just connect with the memory of love. Connect with the memory of oneness. And let it work through me. All right? I'm willing to see the truth about the patient, about the other person. I'm willing to see the truth. That's what I, as a therapist, do. All right? That's how I heal. All right? I go through my process of forgiveness. And every therapist must learn to heal from each patient who comes to him. All right? God does not know of separation. What he knows is only that he has one son. His knowledge is reflected in the ideal patient-therapist relationship. All right. So that the ideal patient-therapist relationship is the one of forgiveness, right? It becomes the reflection of love, right? That's what can be known here in the world of form, right? Is the forgiveness. The forgiveness becomes the reflection of the innocence that is inherent in all of us. That's what can be known here. Okay. So God comes to him who calls. And in him, he recognizes himself. Right? So I take that instant to go to my right mind, as we call it, go to any symbol of unconditional love that you feel comfortable with, and sit with it an instant and just ask for that love to come through you. All right? I am willing to see the truth. I'm willing to see the reflection of that love in my everyday life. I'm willing to see the reflection of that love in my patient, in the person who's in front of me, all right? In the relationship that I have. I'm willing to see the reflection of that. Paragraph 2, think carefully, teacher and therapist, for whom you pray, and who is in need of healing. For therapy is prayer, and healing is its aim and its result. What is prayer except the joining of minds in a relationship with Christ, in a relationship which Christ can enter? This is his home, into which psychotherapy invites him. What is symptom cure when another is already there to choose? But once Christ enters in, what choice is there except to have him stay? There is no need for more than this, for it is everything. Healing is here, and happiness and peace. These are the symptoms of the ideal patient-therapist relationship, replacing those with which the patient came to ask for help. Okay. So he says in the beginning of paragraph 2, think carefully. For whom are you praying? Right? Who's in need of healing? Right? He's reminding us that it's me, it's us. Right? For therapy is prayer. And healing is its aim and its result. Right? So I pray for myself to choose the right teacher. I want the right teacher to guide me. In other words, I'm connecting with the memory of love in my mind and asking it to come through. I'm always reminded of what they call the prayer of St. Francis, where he says, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Right. Make me an instrument of your innocence. Right. So what is prayer except the joining of the minds in a relationship which Christ can enter? I remember when the Course is using that word Christ, they're talking about the innocence, the innocent offspring of God. All right. And he says therapy is prayer. It's a communication. It's communal. We're communing with the oneness, with the person that's in front of us. All right. We're communing with the mind. It's the joining of minds in a relationship in which Christ can enter. So we're inviting the awareness of innocence into this relationship. I'm willing to see it. And verbalizing takes so much longer than doing it, believe me. So what is prayer except the joining of minds in a relationship which Christ can enter? This is his home. The relationship is the home of the Christ. The relationship is the home of innocence, right? Into which psychotherapy invites him. So in this form, psychotherapy, we're inviting the awareness of innocence. What is symptom cure when another is always there to choose? All right. So if we're not inviting the awareness of innocence, if we're not willing to see the truth, all we're doing is, we'll use a technique or, whatever we need to apply to this person's symptoms. All right. That's the symptom cure. It's just so, but what is it when another one is going to pop up? There's always going to be another one. But once Christ enters in, right, what choice is there except to have him stay? Right. So once we're willing to see the innocence, we're willing to see the truth. Says once you do that, all right. Says what choice? You'll see the results. So what choice is there except to have him stay? To have that awareness remain in your mind, to have that awareness reflected throughout your daily life. Right. Once Christ enters in, what choice is there except to have him stay? There's no need for more than this, for it is everything. All right. Once that awareness of innocence rises up, right, he says, well, what else do you need? He says, this is everything. This is everything. And that's what we're working toward. Remember, it's a process. Okay? He says, there's no need for more than this, for it is everything. The awareness of innocence, the awareness that there's no separation. All right. He says, healing is here, and happiness and peace. These are the symptoms of the ideal patient-therapist relationship, replacing those with which the patient came to ask for help. So healing, happiness, and peace replaces all the symptoms that were presented by the patient in the beginning. All right. Remember, this is bottom line, the ideal. All right. But we work toward that. All right. He wouldn't say it if it wasn't possible. This is the awareness that is possible, the awareness that there's no separation between you and I. Right? There's no differences. As Dr. Wapnick would say, the differences don't make a difference. In form, there's differences. He says, but they won't make a difference. Once we have invited the memory of innocence into our mind, once we've invited the truth, healing is here. All right. So the process is I become aware of what my thoughts are, and then I become aware of what is it that I want. All right. I want some help. Help me to see that everyone is one with me. I want to become aware of the oneness. All right. Just thinking. Now, I'm not tooting my own horn here. Just saying a memory that comes up for me. I had a friend I had a friend that would invite me once a week to do massage, but first we would talk. She was a student of the course, and we would talk on how to apply it in our daily lives, And I remember several times I was aware. I just had the thought that I said, as I'm speaking with her, I'm having that thought that I'm speaking to myself, right? And it's a wonderful memory, and it happens every so often, okay? It happens within the videos too, but that's what we're talking about, that breakdown, right, of special interest. There's no separate interests. We all have the same interest, is to realize we never separated, to realize the oneness. Well, that's enough about me. What do you think about me? No, just kidding. That's an old telephone book commercial. Alrighty then. Healing is here. All right? So there's no need for more than this. Once the Christ enters in, once that awareness of innocence enters in, he says, what else do you need? You don't need anything else. Healing is here, and happiness and peace. And these are the symptoms that replace the symptoms that the patient presented. Right? Paragraph 3, the process that takes place in this relationship is actually one in which the therapist, in his heart, tells the patient that all his sins have been forgiven him, along with his own. What could be the difference between healing and forgiveness? Only Christ forgives, knowing his sinlessness. His vision heals perception, and sickness disappears. Nor will it return again once its cause has been removed. This, however, needs the help of a very advanced therapist, capable of joining with the patient in a holy relationship in which all sense of separation finally is overcome. Right? He reiterates and clarifies further what he's talking about here. All right? So the process takes place in a relationship. The process that takes place is actually one in which the therapist, in his heart, tells the patient he's been forgiven of all his sins. There is no sin. All right, that's the thought that we keep in our mind. That's, if we have a request, it's help me to see that. I'm willing to see that, and I'm willing to let that come through me and let that be the message that goes into the mind. So in his heart, he tells the patient that all his sins have been forgiven, all right, as well as his own. What could be the difference between healing and forgiveness? Right? Now, what's coming up for me now is that we can do that. Right? We can hold the image of innocence, right? Hold this person. Tell him it from our heart, right? We recognize, right, that you're not the source of my discomfort, right? I know the source of my discomfort, and I'm turning my back on it, right? There is no guilt. You never separated, right? Now, in the course of that thinking, the form may not change. He's going to talk about that later, in a little while. So you might not see what you think is advanced or curative behavior in the patient or the other person in the relationship. Right? But that's really not the goal. The goal is to have that sinlessness, the awareness of sinlessness, come through you And it's in the mind, because minds are joined. It's in that other person's mind, waiting for the day, the moment that they pick it up, so to speak. Waiting for the day or the moment that they're willing to hear it, that it dawns on them. So he's telling us, what could be the difference between healing and forgiveness? All right? Only Christ forgives, knowing his sinlessness. Right? So we just connect with the memory of innocence, the memory of love, and that comes through. All right? We're not the ones doling out forgiveness. Ego te absolvo. But we're allowing the awareness of innocence to come through us. So we benefit from it also. All right? I don't hold the forgiveness. I don't dole it out. All right? I connect with it, and once again, in the words of St. Francis, become the channel of forgiveness, the channel of the awareness of innocence. Right? There's no more need for guilt. Right? So Christ's vision heals perception, and sickness disappears. Right? So Christ's vision, the idea of seeing through the eyes of Christ, seeing the innocence, right? Being willing to see the innocence, heals perception. It corrects, that's the miracle. It corrects the perception, right? And sickness disappears. Right. Now, nor will it return again once its cause has been removed. All right? So the cause of sickness is the belief in separation, which is so deep we never really get in touch with that. Right? The guilt would be so overwhelming. Right? But it shows up in form here, in our form. Freud was a big proponent of interpreting dreams, right? And, to make the unconscious conscious, okay? Right? To make the unconscious conscious. So Jesus says we're going to use everything in this dream. He's telling us, whether you know it or not, this is a dream. So we're going to use everything that comes to you in your dream. Right? We're going to use that to make the unconscious conscious. We're going to become aware of, oh, I believe I'm separated from the oneness. Let me question that. All right? So Christ's vision heals perception, and sickness disappears, nor will it return again once its cause has been removed. Right? This, however, needs the help of a very advanced therapist. Right? So this total healing needs the help of a very advanced therapist. Jesus says that in form here, there's many teachers, many people demonstrating, all right, the fact that we're not separated. He says, but in form, it's like there are gradations, all right? Like till you work your way up to Jesus, who's the perfect therapist, because he doesn't see the separation, he doesn't see the guilt. only sees the innocence, right? So he is the ultimate therapist, right? But we work our way up there, right? Jesus talks about teachers, right? Those who demonstrate, right? Demonstrate the idea of no separation, oneness, innocence. Then there's advanced teachers, right? Who have a greater awareness of the oneness, right? And then there's the advanced teachers. Then there's the ultimate teacher, right? Which would be like Jesus, right? So they are the very advanced therapists. They're capable of joining with the patient in a holy relationship in which all sense of separation finally is overcome. And that is so possible, right? To whatever relationship you're in, right? To enter what we call a holy relationship, in which the purpose of that relationship is to become aware of the truth of the other, and the truth is innocence. Right? We dedicate ourselves to doing that. So the very advanced therapist is capable of joining with the patient in a holy relationship. It's all being done in the mind. You're not the cause of my discomfort. Right? I know the cause of my discomfort, and I've dismissed it. Right? I've questioned it and told it to go away. Where all sense of separation finally is overcome. All right? For this, one thing, and one thing only, is required: that the therapist in no way confuses himself with God. All unhealed healers make this fundamental confusion in one form or another, because they must regard themselves as self-created rather than God-created. This confusion is rarely, if ever, an awareness, or the unhealed healer would instantly become a teacher of God, devoting his life to the function of true healing. Before he reached this point, he thought he was in charge. He thought he was in charge of the therapeutic process and was therefore responsible for its outcome. His patient's errors thus became his own failures, and guilt became the cover, dark and strong, for what should be the holiness of Christ. Guilt is inevitable in those who use their judgment in making their decisions. Guilt is impossible in those through whom the Holy Spirit speaks. Right? So guilt is impossible if I am connecting to the memory of who I am. I'm connecting to the Holy Spirit. And I'm willing to see the truth. Right? I'm willing to allow that truth to come through me. He says, so guilt is impossible. You're always based in the truth, in the innocence. He says, but that's a process. We work our way up, because there are people who confuse themselves with God. They think, even if they're not really aware of it, they're thinking, how lucky I am. I've had all this education. I know this, that, and the other thing. And, most people don't. So they come to me for help. Whether I'm a physician or, whatever it is, you're a plumber, Yeah. but you just connect with the Holy Spirit. But the thing is, he says, some people think that's it. I amassed all this knowledge myself. I achieved. I got my MD, I got my PhD, all right? I got whatever, my plumber's license, my carpenter's license, whatever license you get, And now I know more than you. And some people use that as, now I'm going to control everything. So he says all unhealed healers make the fundamental confusion in one form or another because they regard themselves as self-created rather than God-created. Right? He says, and this confusion is rarely, if ever, in awareness. Right? Or, if you were aware of it, and he says you would stop. You would stop that. And just all of a sudden just dedicate yourself to, devote yourself to becoming a channel of peace. All right? But before that, before you reach that point, I thought I was in charge, right? You hear the, people, and I don't want to denigrate doctors, but it happens all over the place. Even if you're a film director, right? Or if you're a dance teacher in a dancing school, you think you're in charge, all right? And you're responsible for everything that happens. All right? Now, if it's now your students, your patients, all right, your clients, if anything goes wrong, if they don't heal, if they don't get it right, so to speak, suppose you're a music teacher, if they're not, if they're not playing it correctly, and all of a sudden it's because I think it's because of me, I'm not a good teacher, I'm not a good doctor, I should have been able to save that person, I should, He says before that point is reached, he thought he was in charge of the therapeutic process and was therefore responsible for its outcome. All right? If I think I'm in charge, if I had that, what they call a God complex, right? My patient's errors become my failures. I'm so invested in the outcome. I'm responsible for the outcome. His patient's errors thus become his own failures. And guilt, right? It comes to cover, becomes the cover, dark and strong. It covers up what should be the holiness of Christ. All right. So if I think I'm in charge and my patient or my client doesn't get better, I feel bad. I feel guilty. Stop making excuses. All right? I need you to get better. All right? If I'm in that mindset, all right? The unhealed healer, all right? His patient's errors thus become his own failures. Guilt is inevitable in those who use their judgment in making their decisions. Right? So I'm the magician here. I reach into my bag of tricks and we're going to try this, we're going to try that, and everything's going to be fine. And then all of a sudden it doesn't happen. You say, oh my God. Deep down inside you feel bad. it's because I thought I was using my judgment. I know what's right. I know what has to happen here. I was using that judgment instead of just connecting with the oneness, connecting with the Holy Spirit, the memory of who I am, the memory of God, right? Any way you want to put it. I connect with that space of unconditional love. Right? He says, once you do that, guilt is impossible. Right? And once you do that, you realize that whatever happens in form is not, it's just not the end all and be all. Right? I became aware of this person's innocence. Right? That's what was necessary. Right? Whether they heal physically or not is not the objective. I mean, it's nice, it's wonderful. Everybody wants to feel better. But if it doesn't happen, it's not because of me. If I'm connected to the oneness, if I'm connected to the Holy Spirit, if I'm becoming a channel of peace, right? That peace will enter the mind of the other, right? Available for when they are less afraid. And the physical, the form might not change, but I don't need to be guilty about that. I do my best to connect. And when I connect with the oneness, all right, that I might get the idea of, oh, we'll try this, we'll try that. I might be guided to use the magical forms that we have here that will help. All right? But I'm not invested in the outcome. All right? I have friends in relationships that they'll come and talk to me and we'll talk about things like this, connecting with the oneness and being willing to see their significant other's innocence, be willing to see the truth about them. And then they get upset when the other one is, still acting like a nut. And it's, sometimes they're verbally abusive or psychologically abusive, and, you do what you can, but you don't have to put up with that, right? But if you choose to stay in that relationship and you want to be peaceful, that's your prayer. Help me to see the truth about this person. Help me to see that their language, what they say to me, what they do is, it's based in their own fears. They're terrified. Help me to see that. I can't just whitewash it. Oh, they're just frightened. Before you say that, make sure you're aware of that. Otherwise, the ego came in the back door. And it's just like a whitewashing. It's like using whiteout, for those of you who remember whiteout. Guilt is impossible in those through whom the Holy Spirit speaks. That's the whole idea, is connect with the memory of love, any way you want to. Picture it, all right? And connect with that. That's the Holy Spirit. It's the memory of who you are that came with us into the dream. It's always in the mind. Always ready. Right? As they say, the Holy Spirit merely looks and waits and judges not. So it's always ready. The passing of guilt is the true aim of therapy and the obvious aim of forgiveness. In this, their oneness can be clearly seen. Yet those who could experience the end of guilt, yet who could experience the end of guilt who feels responsible for his brother in the role of guide for him? Such a function presupposes a knowledge that no one here can have, a certainty of past, present, and future, and of all the effects that may occur in them. Only from this omniscient point of view would such a role be possible. Yet no perception is omniscient, nor is the tiny self of one alone against the universe able to assume he has such wisdom except in madness. That many therapists are mad is obvious. No unhealed healer can be wholly sane. All right? So he's just reiterating that idea that you're getting invested in the outcomes because you're believing in your own power. Right? You're believing in the tools of form, right? Instead of being guided. Right? I mean, and if you're using the tools of form, you'd be guided to use those tools, you know. But you won't be so invested in the outcome. Right? He says, how could you experience the end of guilt? He says, look, the end of guilt is the aim of therapy. Right? And it's the same aim as forgiveness. It's the end of guilt. All right? Their oneness can be clearly seen. Yet, who could experience the end of guilt? If you feel responsible for the other, if you feel responsible for your brother in the role of guide for him. I remember many years ago, probably in the 80s, when my brother Stephen was around, and we had a pretty good relationship, my brother Stephen and I. And I had a dream one night. We were walking along the beach, all right, Long Beach in New York. And all of a sudden, he took a step in front of me. He turned around and he punched me in the chest. And he knocked me down. And he said to me, he pointed at me and he goes, "Don't be my father." Profound dream for me. I mean, I never forgot it. Never forgot it. Okay? I got the message. Because I was starting to feel responsible, right, as a guide for him. All right? And he says, you know, Jesus says, look, if you were going to do that, you would have to know everything, past, present, future, you know, of this person's path, right? And all the effects that may occur, right? You would have to be omniscient. You would have to know everything. Such a function presupposes a knowledge that no one here can have, right? No one here can have a certainty of past, present, and future. In other words, I should know. I know what his path is. That's how I was operating, right? And all the effects that may occur within them. Only from this omniscient point of view would such a role be possible, right? It's only possible for me to fulfill that role of guide and, you know, do this and don't do that. And, you know, he says you'd have to be omniscient. for such a role to be possible. But then he says, but no perception is omniscient. He says, you don't know everything. Nor is the tiny self of one alone against the universe able to assume he has such wisdom except in madness. You have to be crazy to think that you have that power, that ability. And then he says, look, many therapists are crazy. They think they have that ability. All right? That one tiny self against the universe. All right? Is able to assume of that much wisdom. Right? That my brother will turn out perfect and happy if he only listens to what I tell him. And he says that many therapists are mad is obvious. No unhealed healer can be wholly sane. All right? And I'm thinking that my brother, who was, I guess, 10 years younger than me, or something around there, and I had assumed the role of parent almost, because my father had died when we were younger. And in group therapy for myself in the 90s, I did say that I felt responsible, right, when my brother died, right? If only I had been there to guide him. That's very arrogant to think that I could be that omniscient, right? And I remember telling him I was confused. I didn't know if he was my brother or my son. That's what the dilemma that was in my mind. All right, everything's okay now. All right. And I still love the memory of my brother, Stephen. The man of mischief. As the Grateful Dead would say, Saint Stephen with a rose, in and out of the garden he goes. All right. No unhealed healer can be wholly sane. And that unhealed healer is the one that still deep down inside believes they're separated from the oneness. Paragraph 6. Yet it is insane not to accept a function God has given you as to invent one he has not. All right. Let me reread that. Yet it is as insane not to accept a function God has given you as to invent one he has not. Right? The advanced therapist in no way can ever doubt the power that is in him, nor does he doubt its source. He understands all power in earth and heaven belongs to him because of who he is. And he is this because of his Creator, whose love is in him and who could not fail. Think what this means. He has the gifts of God himself to give away. His patients are God's saints who call upon his sanctity to make it theirs. And as he gives it to them, they behold Christ's shining face as it looks back at them. Very beautiful, powerful paragraph here. Right? He goes, look, it's crazy not to accept the function of forgiveness. Right? It's crazy not to accept the function God has given you That's our function here, is to be willing to see the truth. To take back my projections and be willing to see the truth. He said it's crazy not to accept that function. It's just as crazy to invent another one that you weren't given. So my taking on the role of father, of parent for my brother was nutty. I mean, all good intentions, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. But he said instead of that, he could have just adopted the idea of forgiveness. Let me see this brother as he truly is. Let me see past the facade, right? Let me see past that facade of the cops chasing him down the street. Only because he said something nasty to him. He's on his motorcycle and he rolls up to the cop. The cop who always gave him tickets on his motorcycle. The cop rolls down his window and Stephen says something nasty and boom, takes off. Oh my goodness. Saint Stephen with a rose. All right. So let's see. I interrupted myself. He says, so it's insane not to accept that function of forgiveness, right? And it's just as insane to make up one that you weren't given, all right? The advanced therapist in no way can ever doubt the power that is in him. And the power is the power of the awareness of innocence, right? The power of the awareness of no separate interests. That's powerful. There is no attack and defense in that situation. There's no need for it. You know your connection to the oneness. All right? So you're aware of the power that's in you. And I don't doubt its source. All right? I don't doubt the source of the power, which is the love of God. All right? Imagine if you were definitely certain that you exist in the love of God. That's powerful. So he doesn't doubt the source. He understands all power in earth and heaven belongs to him because of who he is. All right? I am connected. I am a thought in the mind of God. That's why all the power in heaven and earth. And he is this because of his Creator, whose love is in him and who cannot fail. Think what this means. Right? He has the gifts of God himself to give away. All right? So we have the love, the peace, the awareness of oneness. We have that to give away. His patients are God's saints who call upon his sanctity to make it theirs. Right? We're willing to see past the form, past the charade as we say, right? Past the disguises, to the awareness that this person is a thought in the mind of God. And they call upon the therapist's sanctity to make it theirs. All right, the therapist demonstrates that the love is in him or her, and they call upon the therapist, hey, we want that. Right? That's what we want. Right? And as he gives it to them, they behold Christ's shining face as it looks back at them. Right? And in my channeling of innocence, they become aware of innocence. Right? This is so poetically put. Right? But they behold Christ's shining face looking back at them. They behold their own innocence, in other words. Right? These are the awarenesses that are flowing through. Right? Once my mind is connected to the source, to the love of God. Paragraph 7, the insane, thinking they are God, are not afraid to offer weakness to God's Son. But what they see in him because of this, they fear indeed. The unhealed healer cannot but be fearful of his patients and suspect them of the treachery he sees in himself. He tries to heal, and thus at times he may, but he will not succeed, except to some extent, and for a little while. He does not see the Christ in him who calls. What answer can he give to one who seems to be a stranger, alien to the truth, and poor in wisdom, without the God who must be given him? Behold your God in him, for what you see will be your answer. All right. After all that, I come to this wonderfully poetic line that says, behold your God in him. All right. See the oneness in the other. Be willing to see it. You don't have to make it up. You don't have to know what it looks like. You just have to be willing to experience it. Behold your God in him, for what you see will be your answer. All right. Now, what he's talking about passing on mistakes, in the beginning of paragraph 7, he goes, the insane, thinking they are God, are not afraid to offer weakness to God's Son. So the weakness is the belief in separation, in whatever form it takes. All right. That's the weakness. And the insane, those of us who are not healed, all right, we pass that on. You know, any way you think you might, you know. But what they see in the other, because of this, let me start again. The insane, thinking they are God, are not afraid to offer weakness to God's Son. But what they see in him, because of this, they fear indeed. All right. So what's happening is I'm offering on a deep level my belief in guilt, my belief in separation. And so I see it in them, and I'm afraid of it. I'm afraid of it. So the unhealed healer cannot but be fearful of his patients and suspect them of the treachery he sees in him. All right? So it's always the projection of the treachery. I turned my back on the oneness. I'm the one that was treacherous, but I projected onto you. So now I see it in you. I'm a little bit, always keeping it at arm's distance, as they say, And it says, then you could be a healer like that. There's doctors, there's lawyers, preachers, teachers of all kinds, He says sometimes you're successful, sometimes they try to heal, and thus at times you may. But he will not succeed except to some extent and for a little while. because they're not coming from that source that says you're totally innocent. Right? He does not see the Christ in him who calls. Right? So what answer can he give to one who seems to be a stranger? Right? He can only go by the book, as they say. But then he gives us, he says, here's your answer. He goes, behold your God in him. For what you see will be your answer, with a capital A. So everything is always in the relationship. I'm willing to look past the form. I'm willing to see the truth about this person. And I will see the connection to God. Right? And that's my answer. Paragraph 8, think what the joining of two brothers really means. And then forget the world and all its little triumphs and its dreams of death. The same are one, and nothing now can be remembered of the world of guilt. The room becomes a temple, the street a stream of stars that brushes lightly past all sickly dreams. Healing is done, for what is perfect needs no healing. And what remains to be forgiven when there is no sin? All right? So this is the end product, so to speak. This is the bottom line. All right? Think what happens when you join completely with the other. When you're completely willing to become aware of the innocence. All right? He says that you can forget this world of dreams. All right? Forget the world and all its little triumphs and its dreams of death. All the Sturm und Drang, as they say, that goes on in the world. He says you can forget it. He goes, the same are one. We see that there is no separation. There's only the oneness. We become aware of the oneness, and nothing now can be remembered of the world of guilt. All right? The room, say like your therapy room, or even the street he's going to talk about. The room becomes a temple where you just sit in that realization, that communing with the oneness. All right? The room becomes a temple. The street becomes a stream of stars that brushes lightly past all sickly dreams. All right? You become a lucid dreamer. Even walking down the street, everything is going to reflect the oneness. All right? And the sickly dreams are not a distraction. Healing is done. All right? For what is perfect needs no healing. And what remains to be forgiven when there is no sin? So undoing the belief that there is sickness to be healed, undoing that belief in separation, that's the end of everything. That's our goal. All right. So what remains to be forgiven when there's no sin? Come on now, he's saying, come on. Paragraph 9, be thankful, therapist, that you can see such things as this, if you but understand your proper role. Right? But if you fail in this, you have denied that God created you, and so you will not know you are his son. Who is your brother now? What saint can come to take you home with him? You lost the way, and can you now expect to see in him an answer that you have refused to give? Heal and be healed. There is no other choice of pathways that can ever lead to peace. Oh, let your patient in, for he has come to you from God. Is not his holiness enough to wake your memory of him? Right? just a wonderful little prayer at the end. Right? He says, be thankful that you have the opportunity to see forgiveness, to become aware of forgiveness, to become aware of innocence, rather. All right. You can see such things as this. All right. The room becoming a temple, the street becoming a stream of stars. It says you can see these things. All right. Be thankful that you can see it if you understand your proper role. Right? That I am the one who needs to heal that thought of separation. Right? And I can connect, and I'm willing to see that. Right? And I'm willing to see it in the other. Right? Heal and be healed. Okay? There's no other choice of pathways that can ever lead to peace. Then he just, it's just like a supplementation. Oh, let your patient in. Let your patient in, for he has come to you from God. Is not his holiness enough to wake your memory of him? All right, so the other's holiness is enough to waken our memory of our connection to God. It says, be willing to see that. Be willing to see that in your relationships. All right. Alrighty then. And, spotlighting therapy as the relationship here, but in reality, all relationships. Be willing to see the innocence. Alrighty then. Thank you. Thank you for walking along the path with me. And I'll see you in the next session.